All right, so we're joined today by Siena men's head basketball coach Carm Maciariello. Coach, we appreciate you coming on today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, appreciate you guys having me. Anytime we can talk about our program and meet new people, I think it's a positive, and looking forward to spending a few hours with you guys during a pandemic. It's great.
Absolutely. So I wanted to first start by talking about Jalen Pickett and just the whole landscape of college basketball, especially mid-major college basketball right now. It's extremely difficult to, as you know, in smaller conferences, retain top talent. And, we saw Aaron Estrada leave St. Peter's this offseason after having a tremendous freshman season. And you've somehow been able to get Jalen Pickett to buy into the system here, not only under Coach Christian, but now under you. And he is coming back for his junior year after being really, one of the best players in the conference. So, what are you doing differently here? How are you getting Jalen Pickett to buy in and stick around this long?
Oh, I think Jalen's a great kid. He loves being able to have the ball. It's funny. Early preseason, you play close scrimmages, and Jalen's, asking how many minutes he played, and he's like, "Coach, I want to get to 40 minutes. I want to be an Iron Man." I said, "Well, you got to play some defense, so I'm just going to take you out, and it's never going to be 40 minutes." So I just keep it real with Jalen. I think we have a really good relationship. How he ended up at Siena was kind of weird in itself, because I was the first college coach to call him back when I was an assistant at George Washington. And, he was kind of an unsung hero on a Nike EYBL team, the City Rocks, where he had Nazea Carter and Micah Adams-Woods, Joe Girard, a bunch of different, high-level guys, Isaiah Stewart. And Jalen would just always be on the court, and he led them to winning. And his recruitment, he didn't really have any. He had to qualify still. And so I still remember we were in, I want to say, Dallas perhaps. We were at an EYBL event, and it was April. And Shaheen Holloway had just gotten the St. Peter's job. And so I told Shaheen about Jalen when I was at George Washington still. And then, circle it, 3 weeks later, Jamian gets the job at Siena. And then I get to know Jamian through Mike Rhodes. And we were able to say, "Hey, Jay, this is a good spot for you." And I think Jalen just likes being able to play his game. No one's going to change him. I think you risk that if you try to go to a higher level, right? You don't know how you're going to be used. You can look at so many guys, and there was a transfer from Lehigh that went to NC State, and he played, over 30 minutes at Lehigh. And then this year, once they get into conference play, his minutes were cut. I think you can really see how guys are used, and guys want to play, right? So he has the ball in his hands. He's able to kind of, go as we go. And I say, "Hey, Jay, these are the only things I need from you." And you got to keep him accountable. And he's just a good kid. And I think, the biggest thing with Jalen is he wants to win. And so I think he really impacts winning at our level. Not saying he wouldn't at a higher level, but I think, he can play how he wants to play. And he's comfortable, but he needs to get better being, comfortable being uncomfortable, and getting in a little better shape and being able to, not coast. If you look at some of his box scores, he'll pick and choose times where he wants to assert himself offensively. So, it's always, it's coaching, right? It's a work in progress, and you're just trying to, grow young men. And, I'm just thankful he believed in me and stuck around when, Jamian left and he tested the NBA draft, and then he came back, and him, Elijah Burns, I think really helped solidify that, because I had to meet with Elijah too when Jamian left, and, both those guys stuck around. And, just excited. It's great when you can coach great kids that are good people and good players.
Yeah, and we spoke with Shaheen Holloway actually probably about a month ago, and he kind of echoed the same sentiment there that, when you go to a different school, you don't know what your minutes are going to look like. You don't know how you're going to fit in the rotation. So, I think that, he felt that, obviously he felt that Aaron Estrada was probably better off staying, but, be that as it may. He's in a different situation over there. Let's talk a little bit about your non-conference schedule this past season. You guys were pretty good a year ago, and then you came out this year in the non-conference, and you played a pretty tough schedule, and you played a lot of the teams real tight. I mean, you beat St. Bonaventure 3 overtimes against Yale. You were very close to taking out Harvard. So you played pretty well in and it hasn't really been, the Mac's forte to go outside the conference lately and play these teams that tough. The Mac has been down for a few years. Do you think the Mac is now ready to take that step back to where they used to be? I mean, they had an at-large bid not 10 years ago. I mean, Iona made the tournament as an at-large. So, do you think the Mac is getting back to that level?
I hope so. For me, it's, what we can do. If we do enough non-conference to grow our team, that's all I care about. People were breathing down my neck saying we hadn't won a game on the road. And, we go to Colgate and I don't play Jalen because, some violation of team rules and nothing malicious, but I wanted to prove a point. And then that screws us up for keeping chemistry and going to Cal Poly. We lose those two games. And like you alluded to, the Yale game, the Harvard game, we'll always play a home and, a series with Bonaventure because they're a sister school. So as opposed to some teams playing an A-10 and getting guaranteed money, we get a chance to play an A-10 team in our building, which I think works. But, I just think each school is different, right? Each school has different factors that they have to do where it's, they have to bring in so many dollars with buy games where, we're fortunate enough where, we'll play a buy game if we think it helps our cause. So I got the job. We picked up Xavier, a basketball school from a religious order, no football. And so for me, it's a chance to say, hey, we want to eventually grow to be a Xavier. We want to be able to be an, all-encompassing basketball school. And, when it's all said and done, I think playing that game and then also playing a challenging regional games against the Yale and the Harvards, I think that's great for our fans. We had fan buses come to that Harvard game. It was great. I had a speaking engagement prior. For me, I think it's all about, not only the alums, but also those recruiting areas as well. You want to play in the region you play because you also want to, help the fan base, but you also want to help recruiting and kind of get that momentum in those areas.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about your kind of coaching career a little bit and kind of how you ended up Siena. It kind of reminds me a little bit, actually, in a funny way. We spoke with Delaware's Martin Inglesby earlier this morning for an interview, and he, coach at Delaware now. He coached under Mike Bray. Before Mike Bray was at Notre Dame, he coached at Delaware. So there is sometimes there's like this intertwinement here, and I noticed it with you too because you were at GW for a few years. You come to Siena for the 1 year that Coach Jamie Christian was there. Then he goes to GW. Then you're the head coach of Siena. And we spoke to Jamie about a month ago too and had a really nice interview with him. And respect him a lot as a head coach. And I was curious, as a guy who came in under him for a year, what aspects of his system that you kept the same, just what it was like coaching under him. And, was there things you needed to look into tweaking too and kind of making the program your own?
Yeah, that's a great question. I, loved Jamie and I loved his leadership. I felt I've been able to kind of learn from some of the best coaches in the game from, starting for Fran McCaffrey as a director of ops and working for Ed Cooley. And then, going with Ed from Fairfield to Providence, working for Joe Jones at BU, who had just inherited the job. Then Pat Chambers had won and went to Penn State. Obviously at GW, we went to some NITs and won an NIT. And then, I took a pay cut to come home and work with Jamie because I wanted to learn from him. I actually was involved with Siena when Mike Rhodes was up for the job. It was between him and Jimmy Patsos. And I was going to go back to Siena if Mike got that job. And then, lo and behold, a few years, I don't even know how many years down the road, 3, 4, I'm reaching out to Mike. I kept a relationship with him. He had known Jamie since he was a teenager. And that's, how I got to Siena. And so I always think it's never really about the money. I turned down a job at Boston U when I was there for Joe. I was offered a job at Virginia Tech when James Johnson was the coach there. And I turned it down. And that year I met my wife in Boston and we won the Patriot League in an inaugural season. So I think you can always kind of, people chase the money. I think you always do it based on people and based on kind of a end goal of just trying to get better every day. And then for Jamie, and, I loved his leadership. I loved how he broke down coordinators. So I have an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and a special teams coach per se that does personnel. So I liked how he ran the office in that regard. And then there's some things that I do that he didn't do that I liked. And then there's some things that I didn't like that I don't do. It's basically what coaching is, right? You pick and choose things from other people's philosophies, and you see what fits you. The biggest thing I learned from back when was when Joe Jones inherited that job at Boston U. Pat Chambers was also a Villanova guy, and so I was big into the Attitude Club, and the way Pat did things was emulating Villanova. And Joe got there in our first year, he was trying to do those things, and he wasn't Pat Chambers. So once he realized, hey, I got to be Joe Jones, we took off. And so I wasn't going to kind of have that little hurdle or pitfall per se. And I just said, hey, this is how I'm going to coach the team. And I was lucky, right? I get the job in March. So I have basically the rest of the second semester. I have summer school, and then I have the fall to see, hey, if there's any attrition. So what we had to do was we had to get this team playing faster. Jamian had a tempo, and we shot a lot of threes, and we were the second slowest paced team in the country that year. We also had the best defensive team in that league. And so we were able to kind of make threes and guard threes. And I knew the last 10 years in the MAC, the team that had won the scoring battle, right, who had been the leading scorer in the conference and also kind of been one of the faster paces in the conference, had won the conference. So I knew if we did that, we'd be in great shape. And we led the league in scoring this year. Over 72 points a game, and we were the best three-point percentage field goal defensive team in the league too. So, I kind of had to transition us to playing faster, and so that was one of the things that Jalen had to trust and buy into was, hey, we're not playing as slow. It's not always going to be a 5-1 ball screen at the end after a lot of false motion. If you can get it and go in transition or pitch it ahead, I want these guys attacking and finishing. That's one of our mantras. And so I think that was the biggest thing. And then getting the buy-in, right? So what drills are you doing to foster that and show them the tape that leads them to believe, hey, this can work. And, I think just staying the course, and that kind of what helped us win 20 games.
Yeah, I remember you I think you made some comments even about that before the season that you wanted to get things moving a little bit. And it's funny because now Jamian told us a couple weeks ago that he wants to start playing a little bit quicker down at GW. So maybe you guys both play a little up-tempo this season. I want to talk about your personnel as well. You bring back Pickett, Camper, and Carey, kind of a big three this year. But I think you have an opportunity to be extremely balanced and deep this year with, potential emergence of Gary Harris, Jordan King, and then you brought over Dana Tate from Rhode Island. How do you see the pieces fitting together this year?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's a huge year for Gary Harris. I think he needs to make a jump from a kind of a wide-eyed freshman to one of the better wings in the league. I think he has the opportunity and ability to do that. Love Jordan King's work ethic. He's he's a guy. When I started kind of shortening the minutes this year, in Jordan and Gary, I inserted Gary into the starting lineup, and Jordan started playing more. I thought we really took off. I just love their energy. I love their athleticism, their toughness. They're both coachable. And so for me, that's what it's all about. Just kind of guys that get that character and culture piece and have it ingrained. And then, you talk about Dana Tate. Dana's super talented. He can play basically 2 through 5 for us. And, he's a guy that can come off of a ball screen, or he can set a ball screen and roll or pop and isolate. But like you said, those top three, Pickett, Camper, and Carey, if their leadership is where we need it to be and they're doing everything the right way all the time when nobody's looking, I'll look forward to the younger guys falling in line. And then we also got a graduate transfer in Harrison Curry that'll be able to come in and play right away. And even Kyle Young, I thought, really, picked up his level of play. There's not many 6'10" guys in the MAC that can catch and finish around the rim and run and, do some of the things he does. So just real excited where the program's going. I think year one is hit or miss. You can go one way or the other when you inherit a job, right? You can tread water, you can take a few steps back, or you can kind of lay the foundation to solidify something special. And I think, with us winning the regular season title, it was a step forward. And, we got over a 3.0 in that spring semester, which I thought was another kind of proof of the dedication and determination of this group. And now they're in summer school, so it's another kind of obstacle because we won't have these guys back until, middle of August probably. So, I think there's so many things that can go wrong, but I love where these guys are at. And then you didn't even mention Aiden Carpenter, who I think has a chance to really impact our ball club too as a freshman. He's a kid from New Haven, Connecticut. Was at Lee Academy. He enrolled early, so we had him and Dana on the scout team for the second half of the season, which I think really paid dividends down the stretch as well.
Yeah, so and you mentioned earlier that when you first got the job, and you really wanted to focus not only on playing up tempo, but you wanted to keep that style that Jamie started there at Siena, with just taking away the 3-point shot, and you guys were really elite at 3-point, defending the 3-pointer. I think you finished number 2 in the conference in 3-point attempts to total field goal attempts, and number 1 in the conference in 3-point percentage against you guys. So both tremendous statistics. Are there any categories in your first year that you would say that you maybe did not reach the level that you wanted to in your first year? Any categories where you're looking to make improvement or adjustments year over year going into next year?
Yeah, I would say, the turnover piece, I thought we turned it over a little too much certain games. I thought, the games where we kind of kept that number under 11, we were in great shape. But, for me, I'd love to be able to score a little bit more. I'd love to be able to average maybe 75 to 77 points a game. And that's going to be tough. Elijah Burns was so solid for us at our home games. We were 14-0 at home. Elijah shot over 50% from three, over 80% from the free throw line, and over 50%, maybe in the 60s from 2.
You're right on all those, by the way.
Yeah. So that's tough to replace. I think we can do it by committee. And I also think we have enough guys that can play multi-positions where, Manny Camper can play, for Jamie, he basically played the 2. And for this year, for me, he played the 4. Now I play 4 guards, but Manny can play any of those spots. And so Dana Tate can play 4 spots. We have a couple freshmen coming in, and Bennett Kwasinski and Colin Golston, who are both, guys that can play the 3 or the 4, or maybe the 4 or the 5. So, being able to have that. But, for me, the other thing I would look at besides something you see kind of statistically is, can I play 10 guys? I think as a coach, I was a player. I didn't like going in and out. I wanted to make sure guys could get their rhythm and get their minutes. And, if they're in the flow of the game, I'm not taking them out. If they're making shots and playing well, I'm not taking them out, even if we have kind of a substitution pattern. So is there a way I can find to play, 10 guys? I'm not sure. It's tough to play 9 as it is. Now you play 10. Do you have to press a little more? You're going to play a little. So that for me is, if we're going to score more, do we pick up the defensive pace? In the same vein, I don't want to wear out Don and Jalen and Manny if we do have to pick up full court. So that's kind of some of the things I've been working on this off season is, watching some film, looking at some different ideas. We're still growing our offensive package. I think our families of plays are pretty good. And so now we're just putting in some different wrinkles and being able to execute that way. But I would say turnovers, if we can limit those turnovers, and then if we can, add, 2 baskets, and there you go. You get 4 more shots and you shoot 50%. You make 2 of those. The turnovers into scoring can go hand in hand.
Right. Is it frustrating at all for you when you have to play Fairfield or Marist or Manhattan, guys that are just trying to play this half court game and 55 possessions?
Oh man, and those guys all do a great job. Obviously, John Dunn coached me when I played at Siena. He was there with Coach Orr. And then, Jay Young is just, been a journeyman in this business. So I've always, loved Jay and seen him on the road, and we always catch up, and he's just another great guy. And then Manhattan, Steve does a great job. They always come after you in waves, and what you're getting, and you got to be prepared for it. And then St. Peter, same thing. They want to play a grounded out game too if they have to, and they're all physical. I think, like you talked about the MAC getting better, I think with the coaching in this league and the talent that's in this league, I think it definitely will be better. I don't see how it can't be. I remember back before I transferred from New Hampshire, the America East was rated above the MAC. That was back when Speedy Claxton was at Hofstra, and you had Jay Wright there, and Mike Bray was at Delaware, and Bill Herring at New Hampshire, and Bill Herring at Drexel, and I played at New Hampshire, and you still had Northeastern, you still had Towson. So I definitely think it could be a top 20 league in the country. I'm not sure if it'll be next year or not, but I like where the league's going. I think there's tremendous coaches that all do a great job in all facets of it. And, at the end of the day, it's great basketball. It's always been a great basketball league.
Yeah, it's funny you say it too, all that, because Joe and I, we spoke about it too. I think also when we talked to Sheen Holloway, was just kind of looking at the conference as a whole. And obviously, just in terms of it being on the rise, and I just kind of looked at like some of the teams at the bottom and having, John Dunn at Marist and Jay Young at Fairfield and Greg Paulus at Niagara, and like those are three coaches doing a really good job. And if you have, if that's the bottom of your conference, obviously you do expect that rise to come. And
we didn't even mention Rick Pitino yet, but
yeah, of course. Then you got that, and Sheen Holloway wasn't thrilled about having to go up against Rick Pitino next season, but yeah, no, I mean a big thing too in terms of getting the conference better and getting your team better specifically is, like we talked about earlier, the non-conference schedule. And you mentioned the Xavier game. That was just the beginning of a stretch of really brutal games for you guys, going up against St. Bonaventure and then on the road for 3 straight against Harvard, Yale, and Colgate. I mean, just a really tough stretch that I think probably, like you said, paid dividends when you especially, you had that 10-game winning streak at the end of the season. So I was curious, obviously we were talking about this actually, Joe and I, before we got on the show in terms of teams releasing their schedules. Is there any sort of little preview you could give us with the non-conference of what it might look like, or if there's anybody on there that so far?
Yeah. So that's an easy one. I don't have any secrets with that stuff. And for me, just coming into building a schedule, right, I always look at the Patriot League and the Ivy League teams because they're a little different than the MAC teams. So usually in the Patriot League, you have a little more skilled guys. So those games are going to kind of test your team a little more because they're going to have a pick and pop 5-man and a pick and pop 4-man, where most teams in the MAC are going to play 4 guards and maybe a big that's really not a guy that can play away from the basket. Kind of teams that would kind of put our principles in kind of flaws defensively, that moving forward into the MAC, we'd be able to kind of game plan, have some things that would be plan when we say, hey, X, Y, or Z. So this coming season, we'll open up with Colgate at our place. We always want to play teams that are going to be picked in the top half of their league. When I got the job, we signed a 4-year contract with American. So we started last year at our place, and then we're going to go consecutive years down there and then get them coming back. Yale's coming to our place. We're going to Bucknell. We're going to St. Louis before we go to the Advocare tournament. So they should be a top 25 team, I would think. I think Travis Ford does a great job, and that's a great arena and a nice place to play, great fans. And then trying to think, talked about Colgate American. Oh, and then we got to go to Bonaventure again this year, which is never a fun trip at Olean. But the blessing of this whole situation with the coronavirus is we're starting school August 24th. So we'll be done with the first semester before Thanksgiving.
Right.
So, and then, now you don't start school again until January. So I wish I was in college at that time. You get hoops basically from Thanksgiving till the new year. You don't have to worry about school. It's great for our guys.
Yeah, that was and that leads me into my the final question that I had here for you. The MAC appears to be acting very carefully in terms of the coronavirus. They already talked about delaying the fall semester a little bit. And that you guys aren't allowed to have on-campus, practices and activities through the end of July. How are you dealing with this situation? Is it throwing a wrench into your plan, or are you kind of just working around it at this point?
Yeah, it's. I'm just glad it wasn't last year, right? I'm glad we were a year removed because obviously to go through being a first-time head coach during a pandemic would have been really tough. And I think the biggest thing is just missing your players and miss being around them. I do think our leadership is really good with Manny Camper and Don Carey and Jalen and those upperclassmen because, they're able to kind of stay in touch and work out on their own. And they're all kind of intrinsically motivated, which I think is important. So when you have a team coming back where we didn't get to finish the season last year and we were playing really well, I think they all kind of know that, and I still think they're hungry for more. So I think that's the positive. So, we try not to do too many Zoom calls because they're still in summer school. Try to send them different videos and different podcasts and different, quotes and articles. And my assistants do a great job of keeping in touch with the players. And, I was one of those guys when I played, you don't really want to get inundated with calls and texts from your coaching staff. So I'm just making sure I'm touching base with them, whether it's a text or a call, checking in with their parents as well. And, just trying to make sure they're in a good space and update them on what's going on. When do we think we'll be back? I'm hoping we can come back mid-August so we can get acclimated to the process of, procedures we're going to have to do now to keep Siena, kind of corona-free. So it's like, hey, temperature checks, bracelets to show that you've gotten, checked in, wearing masks. How many guys can you have in the locker room? Can you have, where are you going to watch your film? Where are you going to do your meetings? Are we going to have Zoom meetings virtually from their dorm rooms where now we're meeting that way so we don't have to spend as much time in contact? I'm just hoping they kind of get this immunization kind of figured out so we can kind of have some sort of cure, or people don't have to worry as much where they know they can get a treatment that's going to be, beneficial and get rid of that thing.
Right. Yeah. And, we're obviously hopeful on our end. We want to see college basketball this year. Before we officially started this interview, you were talking to us a little bit about your new website, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity here at the end to, just retouch on that. I think you said coachesforchange.org.
Yeah, coachesforchange.org. So, myself and a bunch of assistants from around the country, Mike Menega from Oregon, Jerry McNamara, Amir Abdul-Rahim, who's the head coach at Kennesaw State, and Alvin Brooks III, who's at Baylor, and, so many great coaches. There's about 40 of us. And so Coaches for Change is basically an organization that's just talking about, engaging, educating, empowering, and evolving our student athletes and ourselves, and kind of bringing everyone up to speed on what they can do within their process of voting and absentee ballots and everything of that nature. So hopefully this is a resource. This website, coachesforchange.org, is a website that can be used by every athletic department where, hey, our players can go on, it can tell a story, can give a brief history, some educational pieces. But then at the end of the day, it's also going to show how powerful the pro and student athlete is, obviously all the way down to Colin Kaepernick with, kind of him being a guy that foreshadowed this whole thing. If people would have kind of, knew now what they could have, maybe this would be a different place. But just excited to be able to have a platform. Like I said, I've used money out of my own pocket just to kind of get this website built, just because I think it's an important cause. And I think, all student athletes and all students, to be honest, need to understand the power of them and the ability that they have with registering to vote. And so, just excited moving forward to try to be, the good and a positive force. And that's all we can do. If everyone does that, it's funny. There's so many different Zoom calls and things on Twitter, but if we're on a Zoom call with, a bunch of coaches from all levels, well, more times than not, there's probably not going to be more than there's probably not going to be anyone that's racist on there because you're all kind of the same mind, right? You have to go into a different area, a place that you haven't been, and sit down and listen to conversation. So you can pick up things to say, hey, there's a red flag right there. You shouldn't be saying that. And that's where the difficulty lies, right? It's easy to talk on a call and, have a bunch of words and what we should be doing. I wanted to kind of have some action behind it and, do something that I feel like, hey, a website can be around for eternity. It doesn't have to go anywhere.
And yeah, definitely. Sorry, Joe, to cut you off. I just wanted to say, no, but very respectable thing that you're doing, and obviously, a time very important right now. But also, I think Joe and we talked about it too when everything was kind of at the height of it, and obviously we still have a long ways to go. We just felt, we felt like there was something we wanted to do, and we were trying to figure out the best way to do things. And what ironically wound up happening was we wound up having Jamie on the show, and that was part of the interview because we wanted to talk to him about it and get his perspective and, use our platform. And I think it's great that you're doing the same thing and using your platform to really, affect change.
No, I I appreciate that. And I basically, that's what I told the group on our first call. We've had probably six kind of conference calls with the whole group, and we have one tonight. And my first call was just like, hey, I always wanted to kind of have a voice to help. And as an assistant coach, you have some of a voice, but now as a head coach, I feel like I have a bigger platform and more of a voice. And so I wanted to take advantage of that and take advantage of it for the good. And, I have a 1-month-old and a 3-year-old little girl and a beautiful wife. And so my thing is to be able to make this world a better place for them when we're not here, and that's the scary part. You have people these days that don't even want to procreate because they're worried about how the world's going to be for their kids. And that's a scary thought.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you mentioned also, the platform for students and, with the rise of social media and the accessibility of all these games now on all these streaming sites, ESPN Plus and, all the online streaming, they have a lot more of an impact than they once did on everybody's lives. So,
and the fact that the NCAA, recently made the decision to, not have any sort of college basketball activities going on election day to make sure that, every player has the opportunity to vote, which is great.
Yeah. And we're doing that at Siena College too. So we're not, every sports team is not having any workouts. So that'll be a mandatory off day. And, it's obviously important, but, a lot of people are going to have their absentee ballots in. So, hey, what are we doing in the community to help, with the polling? So hopefully we can come up with some good ideas for what our guys are doing during election day. And, like I said, I appreciate you guys having me on. I think this is always a positive when I can meet new people and say hello and we can talk hoops. I mean, there's nothing better than that, right?
Absolutely.
Completely agree with that.
And, Coach, I'm about 10 minutes from the Monmouth campus. So next time you guys are down here, I'm going to come watch you guys play because that's always a fun game.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you guys. And like I said, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on, Coach. We really appreciate it.
All right. See you guys.